Take a network break. I'm Drew Conry Murray.
And I'm Jonna Johnson.
Welcome to our weekly rundown of networking and IT news, plus all the virtual donuts you can eat. Today we're going to talk about AT&T taking Broadcom to court, Verizon wanting to buy Frontier, Cisco patching some serious vulnerabilities, plus financial results and some space networking. We're sponsored today by iTential. You can improve your network automation from one-off scripts that only you can use to safe, robust automations you can share with your entire IT organization. Find out more at itential.com/packetpushers. That's itential.com/packetpushers. And just a reminder, if you like Network Break, check out our other podcasts, including Day 2 DevOps, Heavy Strategy, which includes my co-host, Jonna Johnson, Heavy Networking, IPv6 Buzz, Network Automation Nerds, Packet Protector, and there's even more. It's nerdy tech analysis and compelling conversations about infrastructure, cloud, professional development, and more. It's all at packetpushers.net. All right, let's get into the news. AT&T is suing Broadcom over changes to VMware support contracts. AT&T wants to extend a support contract for VMware software under a perpetual license. It says it has a deal with VMware that allows for this support to be extended through 2026. AT&T says Broadcom is refusing to support unless AT&T, quote, agrees to purchase scores of subscription services and software that, one, AT&T does not want or need, two, would impose significant additional contractual and technical obligations on AT&T, and three, would require AT&T to invest potentially millions, end quote. And that's from the legal document that the AT&T submitted to the court. Jonna, your thoughts here?
Oh, well, it's interesting, Drew, because I first read this and I thought, who cares? Big tech company sues other big tech company, yawn. And then I dug into it a little bit and I said, oh my gosh, everyone who's listening to this who has ever used VMware is going to be going, yes, go AT&T. Because as we all know, we just sort of hate these lock in, jack up the price deals. Mm-hmm. And AT&T is finally fighting back. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think many VMware customers are familiar with AT&T's complaint. They've sort of been forcibly switched from the perpetual to subscription licenses, and they're often bundled with software and services that customers maybe didn't want, weren't planning on using. So AT&T is seeking immediate relief from the New York Supreme Court. The company says it runs approximately 75,000 VMware VMs across more than 8,000 servers. The service provider's court filing is kind of dramatically written. They're alleging that the lack of support could endanger emergency service operations, customer support, and even national security. So these court filings that I read tend to be kind of dry. This one's got a little juice in it.
Well, and it's also perfectly timed because right after the CrowdStrike Microsoft thing, basically Microsoft said, it wasn't us, it was CrowdStrike. And so now AT&T has teed everything up to say, wasn't us, it was VMware, or Broadcom rather. And I think that's actually really well timed. I mean, as we all know, AT&T has some of the best lawyers in the business. So not only is the filing incredibly on point, but the timing of the filing is also incredibly on point because it's basically saying, hey, third-party risk is an issue. We have a third party here who is putting us at risk, which is really, really smart on their part.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier, it's like people are. This is the first time I feel like I'm finding myself on the side of AT&T that they're like leading this populist revolution against Broadcom, but people are mad about what Broadcom's been doing. I'm
not a lawyer, and I know you aren't either, but I really wonder if there can be room for a class action suit here because this is crazy. Broadcom has been. I know we've been predicting gloom and doom since the acquisition, but Broadcom really is pushing the limits with what it's doing here. So I think we'll all watch with bated breath to see how AT&T does on this, and I certainly hope it's the start of many more.
Yeah, we'll see. I think in this case, if AT&T wins, it would just be a victory for AT&T, and I am confident that Broadcom is going to fight this with everything it has because they don't want to change the model that they've settled on. And we'll talk about Broadcom's results further down in the show for reasons. But it does also make me wonder if AT&T is successful in pushing back, if other large customers who have in-house legal counsel might also decide to take a crack at this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you can't say it just applies to AT&T because basically it sets precedent. So, unless you decide to toss out precedent, it's actually illegal to treat company A differently than you treat customer A differently than you treat customer B. And so if AT&T gets a break, Broadcom must legally, by law, extend those breaks to other customers that are comparable to AT&T. Now, of course, they may push back and say, oh, well, it only applies to customers who do more than X many million in business with us or whatever.
Sure.
But the main point is it will be precedent setting if AT&T wins in any way, shape, or form.
Or they don't find a way to settle out of court.
Exactly. Well, that's the great likelihood here, but we shall see.
Yeah, we shall see. So we'll keep an eye on this and we'll update you as we learn more, but we'll move on. Verizon's making a $20 billion bid for Frontier Communications based in Texas. The idea is Verizon wants to expand access to fiber optic networks to offer both fiber to the home for more customers while also supporting the wired backbone for its cellular network.
Yeah, and actually, just to drill down a little bit into this, Frontier has fiber across 25 states that Verizon is looking to expand into and expand both immediately and cost effectively. The real challenge is that its existing FiOS is expensive to expand organically, so Frontier may be the only way that Verizon can accelerate its growth. I think it's a smart move. They're basically half buying a supplier and half buying, the capability, because if you think about it, they need wireless backhaul in the worst way, they being Verizon, because it is the most popular wireless network. And it also needs the ability to deliver, FiOS to the home. So it's kind of a win-win. It's something they can offer their customers, and it's something that they can also use to expand their network. And I will say, as a Verizon customer, I applaud this move because I am still mad at Verizon for refusing to sell me all wireless internet. I know why they do it, because they're afraid to completely swamp their network. But guys, look, I will give you lots and lots of money. You can take it. You can take it from my current provider. So please, just do what you need with that money to build out your network. And here they are doing it. So yay.
You would give up fiber to the home for a wireless connection?
Oh, that would presuppose that I would get fiber to the home. No.
You don't have fiber to the home. Okay.
Right. I have to live with our lovely, wonderful cable company. And lest everyone forget, cable company infrastructure is inherently asymmetrical. So not only is the service extremely weird because it has a strange outage that occurs the same time every day, and is completely untraceable, and nobody knows where it's coming from, but it's certainly nothing local in my house. But on top of that, if you're trying to upload things, which anyone that's using cloud services often does, you are throttled back because the infrastructure is inherently asymmetrical. So yes, if I could get FiOS, I still remember when I lived in New York City in a giant high rise, basically the temp agency filled Verizon's need for young people to take signups, and people were literally hugging those people who were standing there in the red and black t-shirts. I mean, we were streaming out of the elevators, giving these poor startled kids hugs. Hey, FiOS is here. So wow. Yes, we are all very happy about this. And yes, so I guess we've got two yay phone company stories, which has got to be some kind of record, right, Drew?
Yeah, I really did not expect the morning to go like this. Although I will say, if the deal has to get by Frontier shareholders first, and I don't anticipate a lot of issue there, but I do anticipate U.S. federal and state regulators to be taking a close look because there's not a lot of competition in the service provider space, and Verizon swooping in and buying Frontier would reduce that competition even further. So this is not a done deal by any stretch.
No, but I do think Verizon will be able to make a pretty compelling case that consumers will benefit. And frankly, Frontier is just not big enough to offer a true alternative in most cases. But I could be wrong. I'm not in one of those 25 states. So moving right along to another large vendor in the networking space, Cisco has just announced a fix of a trio of security vulnerabilities. There are three, all of the most important being CVE 2024-2469, which allows command injection and escalation to root privileges on Cisco Identity Services Engine with a severity of 6.0. That's kind of a big deal, except for the one caveat that essentially in order to exploit this vulnerability, the attacker must have valid administrator privileges on the affected device, which means essentially it's more of a risk for, say, insider threat or as part of an existing attack. However, an attacker could exploit this vulnerability by submitting a carefully crafted CLI command and could then elevate the privileges to root. So I understand why it's gotten the severity rating, which is roughly medium. So that one's fixed. Another one is the backdoor admin account with fixed credentials embedded in the Cisco Smart Licensing utility. And another one allows disclosure of sensitive information via unauthenticated HTTP access to log data. For the ISE vulnerability, as we said, you need to be a local attacker with admin privileges. For smart licensing, the risk here is that unauthenticated threat actors can exploit this vulnerability to access log files containing sensitive data, including API credentials. So this is a way to get some credential data. Drew, I don't know what your thoughts are on all of this.
I mean, the ICE vulnerability, the fact that you need to be a local attacker, the fact that you need to have admin privileges sort of reduces the threat level, of course. But the fact that it's ICE also means like you don't want to mess around with your ICE security because that's sort of like the linchpin of your identity services management. So I assume that's a high priority for folks. Smart licensing, I thought, who cares if you can hack my smart licensing? And I guess you could like make me pay more, but the fact that you could get API credentials does make that seem like a worse risk than it might sound on the surface.
Yeah, and I think overall, I don't want to be too rose-colored glasses, but these are the kinds of things that crop up in systems that have grown up over years, and the fact that they're sort of staying on top of it, that these have been found, not really exploited to date, and discovered and patched is kind of security working the way it ought to, I guess. So, for those of you who are running ICE, you probably want to remember to, apply the patches and just stay on top of it, because this shouldn't be happening without your knowledge, which is why we're talking about it here. Yeah,
just one extra note on that ICE vulnerability. There is public exploit code available. So again, while you do need to be a local attacker, the fact that exploit code's floating around out there might push that up your priority list, aside from the fact that it's ICE. Yeah, aside from the fact that it's ICE, you can get the software, and it hasn't been widely used, but that's not to say that it won't be. Yeah, exactly. All right, a quick break to tell you about our sponsor today, iTential. You need a network automation system that's not fragile, that anyone in your org can use, and that leverages the automation work you've already done. iTential gives you all of this. With iTential, you'll be able to run your script safely as a workflow that integrates with your change management, IPAM, monitoring, ticket system, and anything else you need. iTential doesn't just save you CLI time, it touches everything that needs updating and testing when you make a network change. And iTential is low code. That means you don't have to be a software developer to use it. So whether you're just getting started with network automation or you're deep down the rabbit hole with GitOps and pipelines, iTential can help. Automate from ticket creation to ticket closure with iTential. You can find out more at itential.com/packetpushers. That's itential.com/packetpushers. The Dutch tech giant ASML, which makes the machines that make computer chips, is signaling that it's going to start pushing back against restrictions imposed by the U.S. on ASML's business dealings with China. The U.S. cites national security as the reason to limit sales and servicing of ASML equipment in China, to deny China access to the most advanced chip-making technologies. But the CEO recently spoke out at a public event in New York saying, quote, "I think there will be more pushback, and I think we have to hope we reach a certain equilibrium, because as a business, what we all want is a bit of clarity, a bit of stability." He also said, quote, "I think to make the case that this is about national security is getting harder and harder." Both of those quotes come from reporting by Reuters. My reading sort of between the lines here is that ASML is saying, we're losing some business opportunities here and we don't like it. We've cooperated up until now, but, you can't keep pushing us forever. Jonna, what's your take?
Well, I think he's right. He does have a point, and one of the challenges is that, if the U.S. government is actually handing out money to U.S. chip manufacturers to manufacture chips on U.S. soil, that kind of does say that we're trying to stack the deck. That said, I am actually deeply concerned about the risk, the national security risk, and I think if you're pretending that it doesn't exist, then you're either confused or you're attempting to confuse other folks. I still remember not terribly long ago when Amazon discovered a bug in a chip that was in a motherboard that had made it all the way through several purchases, including a company that Amazon had purchased, which had been packed all the way back in China, designed intentionally to go after DoD information, because the company that was producing the motherboards, actually there were video motherboards that was selling to the Defense Department. Yeah. So China does take the long view of this stuff. Being able to hack devices that make chips is actually not a hard thing for them. I mean, technically it might be difficult, but it's child's play to think of it. It reminds me, not to go off on a tangent, but I remember even back in the 60s, the Soviet Union was actually able to hack the United States by going into IBM and putting a bug in the then brand new electric typewriters so you could see what was getting typed. And there in the supply chain, IBM didn't catch it way back then because it was so forward looking. But basically what I'm saying is that the idea of hacking supply chains is older than we are and has been effective for longer than we've been around. So I do think the national security concern is very real, despite the fact there may also be kind of this question of making money as well and trying to stack the deck in favor of hurting China and helping the U.S.
Yeah, I think my perspective on the national security risk, obviously backdoors are an issue, but also just wanting to deny China the ability to build the most advanced chips, which would allow them to do other things like build better military weapons, build better computing capabilities, allow them to, sort of outcompete the United States economically and technologically. So I think that's part of the motivation behind this. I will say, ASML is in a tough spot because that U.S. government money going to chip foundries in the U.S., those chip foundries are going to be buying products from ASML because ASML is pretty much the only one doing, I think it's the ultra whatever lithography tools to write on, to etch onto
fine. Exactly.
ASML is pretty much the only one that does it. So they've got a corner on the market, and any money going to the government, any money going to U.S. companies to build chip making capabilities here would be buying from ASML anyway. So the U.S. government does have some leverage there. I think they've also been leaning on the Dutch government to partner, but the Dutch government was also saying maybe this is too much. We don't want to, limit the growth of our own homegrown tech company giant here. So again, this is part of our coverage of sort of the intersection of technology and politics in the U.S. It's getting harder and harder to extricate the two.
Well, yeah, and I agree. And just one last note. I mean, I hate to say it, but come on, Dutch, you have to pick a side. And if you're picking a side with China, then we will not be using your tools to build our chips. And that means we'll be playing catch up pretty quickly. But we have done it in the past. I mean, I hate to be really hardcore on this, but that is the reality of the direction things are going. And it is the case that I tend to work with a lot of, government agencies and suppliers to government agencies who are acutely aware of national security concerns. So I have a slightly biased viewpoint on all of this.
It's good to state your priors, yes.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, moving right along, the Metro Ethernet Forum certifies VMware, Fortinet, and Versa SASE products. This is part of its ongoing effort to bring standards and interoperability into the SD-WAN and SASE space. So it has certified the offerings from Broadcom's VMware unit, Fortinet, and Versa as being compliant with, lots of numbers, SD-WAN 70.1, SASE 117, and 0118 standards. What does this actually mean? Well, not exactly a lot. Interoperability is still not a reality, so standards is sort of standards in air quotes. But at least the Metro Ethernet Forum is working to bring consistency to discussions of and enterprise selection among SASE tools. There has not previously been a canonical vendor-neutral definition of SASE that's shared by vendors, service providers, and enterprises. As most of you recall, SASE started as a architecture created by Gartner, and it was really whatever if I say my T-shirt is SASE, it's SASE now. And it's good that the Metro Ethernet is really trying to put some consistency across this. Again, interoperability, good luck with that. Any thoughts on that, Drew?
I'm not against standards efforts per se. Maybe I'm channeling my inner Greg, but does anybody really pay attention to the Metro Ethernet Forum and do their standards imprimaturs matter to anyone? I think if you asked folks, they'd probably go with Gartner more than they would MEF.
Well, yeah, but Gartner doesn't have a standard. That's the problem.
Well, that's true. Gartner doesn't have a standard.
That is the main issue, which is it's just sort of a hand-wavy, fluffy, all these products belong in a category together, but we can't be bothered to define the category. Mm-hmm. So while I would say the Metro Ethernet versus Gartner wins, MEF loses, I would say that at least the enterprises I've been working with have been desperately trying to figure out what is SASE and what is not SASE, because every vendor walks in the door saying, I have a SASE solution, except it doesn't do anything that the other SASE solution does, and it does a lot of things that one doesn't do. So it's been really quite a problem. So I think anyone coming up with a SASE, a consistent definition of SASE that is vendor neutral and shared by vendors, service providers, and enterprises is a good thing, regardless of who they are.
Yeah, I'll need to dig into this because I'm curious what they're using as the definition of a SASE then and how that might differ from sort of what's out there from a marketing perspective.
Exactly. I think it's worth digging into. And in fact, I'd probably come back to your does anyone care about the Metro Ethernet Forum? I think they've
Not to be rude, but...
No, but I think they've actually made themselves a lot more interesting because of this move, because it helps them at least as much as it helps anyone else, because it shines a spotlight on something that really needed to be illuminated. So I think that's a good thing. I
mean, if they were going to glom onto anything, SASE is a great one to glom onto because it is a wide open area for someone to bring some kind of neutral third-party definition to the space.
Exactly. You said it well.
Yeah.
Yes, you said it well. Because Gartner didn't. Let's be clear.
All right, moving on, we'll get some financial results from Broadcom and HPE. We'll start with Broadcom. They announced their third quarter of fiscal year 2024. They had revenues of $13 billion, up 47% over this time last year. However, the company's net income was a loss of $1.8 billion. Essentially, that had to do with a one-time tax provision of $4.5 billion regarding some kind of they're saying an intragroup transfer of certain IP rights to the United States as a result of a supply chain realignment. I'm not really sure what that means in English, but it cost them $4.5 billion this quarter, and that hurt their net income.
Yeah, and the semiconductor side of the house brought in $7.2 billion for the quarter. Infrastructure software, including VMware, brought in almost $5.8, which is up 200% year over year, which may not continue to be the case if AT&T's lawsuit is successful.
Right. Although you can see that 200% year over year growth, that's VMware like substantially adding to Broadcom's bottom line really quickly. So in the short term, those license changes and price hikes are having the desired effect.
Yes, exactly. But you can certainly see why AT&T is a little annoyed by it.
Yeah, and everybody else. CEO Hock Tan said that for the full year, the company is estimating that it will do $12 billion in revenue that will have been driven by AI specifically. And I think as the CEO, he wants to tie Broadcom to AI because that's where the money is. But he's including ASICs for Ethernet fabric supporting AI, as well as custom AI accelerators that Broadcom builds. And I don't know if folks know that, but Broadcom does provide some essential components, some software and design and development support for Google's TPU processors, which Google uses for AI workloads. So Broadcom does have a tie-in to AI chips. It's not as well known in the space as NVIDIA, but it is getting some money from that space.
Well, and I just want to highlight something. The Ethernet fabric supporting AI has gotten another boost. Just a little side note, promoting an upcoming episode of Heavy Strategy. We had a great chat with Cisco's CIO who talked a little bit about their in-house AI cluster using NVIDIA chips and Ethernet as the fabric, which I thought was quite interesting. And he said the proof of concept was performing incredibly well. You'll hear all this on the Heavy Strategy episode. Well worth a listen. But it's interesting to see that that's moving right ahead. So that actually is, definitely going to be probably a sustainable growth area for Broadcom.
Yeah, I will say every networking vendor that you can name, Cisco, Juniper, Arista, and so on, is touting Ethernet as the networking fabric for your AI workloads. And all of them are using the Broadcom ASICs in there. So yeah, Broadcom has definitely a dog in this fight.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear, my example is using it internally inside Cisco as opposed to pushing Cisco.
Right. That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah. All good, and go have a listen. I think that's coming out in early October. But Greg, you also mentioned that Google is maybe looking to end its relationship with Broadcom. What's going on there?
Yeah, so last year, reports surfaced that Google might be looking to end its relationship with Broadcom over the next couple of years because they want to have more control over their AI chip design and production. There's no public statements from either Broadcom or Google about this, but several reports came out online saying that insiders are saying Google's looking to sever the relationship with Broadcom.
Yeah, which could be interesting. I mean, I worry about Google long-term in general because the online advertising market is getting absolutely knocked sideways by AI. And if search advertising goes away, that's 77% of Google's revenue. So all the beautiful, wonderful things they're doing in AI and that they're doing in quantum and that they're doing in everything suddenly goes away because that revenue goes away. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, I have feelings about AI-powered search, and I feel like at the moment Google doesn't have to worry, but of course you always have to be thinking about where the puck is headed in tech. So if AI search companies can get their act together, it could be a threat finally to Google's search dominance. And yes, despite all of Google's many activities in other industries, search revenue drives the vast majority of its income.
Yeah, and remember, it doesn't have to be very good. As long as the eyeballs. I mean, that argument is a bit like saying, "Oh gosh, I don't think the New York Times or the Washington Post is threatened by AI generated stuff." Well, it doesn't matter if the text is completely unreadable. If enough people go look at it because they want to see what celebrities look like in bikinis or whatever the hell the thing is, and I hope that's sufficiently PG rated, that's actually what happens is all the advertisers will switch over to wherever the eyeballs are going, regardless of the quality of the content that generated the eyeballs. So even though you and I might say, gosh, I really hate AI-generated search, it doesn't matter because if everybody else is going in that direction, the advertisers will go there too, and then Google crumbles. And that's what I worry about.
I guess I'm dating myself by, sort of using the VHS versus Betamax argument here. Like if it's good enough, that tends to win in the market.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going on. And the main issue, and I keep coming back to this, is Google is not selling us search. Google is selling our eyeballs to advertisers. Right. So it doesn't matter the quality of the quote-unquote product because it's not a product.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think we have one other financial results.
Yeah, one more financial results and then the space networking. So HPE also reported a Q3 2024 results. They had revenues of $7.7 billion, up 10% year over year. Net earnings were $512 million, up slightly over this time last year. By business unit, server revenue was $4.3 billion, up 35% from last year. Intelligent Edge, which includes the Aruba networking business, had revenues of $1.1 billion, down 23% from last year. Hybrid cloud revenue was $1.3 billion, down 7% year over year. So I think as we discussed about Dell's results last week, HPE's revenues are being driven by selling servers with GPUs in them, and the results bear that out pretty clearly.
Well, and interestingly, since last week, a little bit of an update, we are finalizing our research study on emerging technology. And one of the results that came out was an interesting sort of mental conflict in most of the folks that we interviewed about how they anticipated their workloads changing, because the vast majority of folks anticipate that their on-prem workloads are going to continue to drop. So investing less in data centers, on-prem workloads come down and down and down. Okay, we kind of knew that. But they are also saying at the same time that they're bringing clusters in-house in order to do AI model generation and model training. Now, these are mostly the largest folks are doing that. But if that's actually the case, that would tell me that's kind of a renaissance for anyone who's making data center equipment, because enterprises are suddenly going to reverse the trend of pushing everything out to the cloud and start moving backwards, kind of doing a U-turn and building more in-house data centers. And I know this has been a hot button for a long, long time. I know Greg's thoughts on it. I wouldn't say it's a pendulum swing per se. I think it's just an application, a different application environment. And the degree to which a large enterprise invests in AI will govern the degree to which it will be bringing computing in-house again.
I mean, if that's the case and that actually happens, my gut instinct is that HPE may be well positioned, at least from a marketing perspective, with its GreenLake platform, which is about allowing you to build on-prem infrastructure with sort of a cloud-based model and then make it easier to tie into the public cloud as well if you need to move workloads from on-prem into the cloud.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I think this is actually, of all vendors we've talked about, this would be a big win for HPE if it comes about. And again, I would say that the same people are simultaneously telling us one thing when you ask them questions about their overall computing and a different thing when you ask them specifically about AI. And I don't think they've put the two together yet to go, oh, wait a minute. And there's also the fact that the AI bubble could burst or at least deflate. And who knows?
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. And I don't know if we'll be able to talk about your survey results in more detail when they come out, but you've definitely piqued my interest here.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's always fun to highlight the parts where people don't quite connect the dots.
Yeah. Right. Did you realize what you said? This is two different things.
And don't even get me started on what's going on with distributed workforce, because there's some very big dots that people aren't connecting there either. But never mind that. Let's just jump to space networking. Starlink is has a direct-to-cell exclusive to T-Mobile, but just for a year. So last weekend, as is his wont, Elon Musk tweeted that, or rather X'd that, what do we even call it now, that that's starting out working with one carrier in each country as partner for self-service from space. So here in the U.S., T-Mobile, Rogers in Canada, Optus in Australia. But after the first year, he would seek to make deals with other carriers as well. Right now, AT&T and Verizon, the two biggest U.S. carriers, are backing AST Space Mobile, though it doesn't yet have satellites in orbit and will need as many as 60 to offer continuous coverage across the U.S. Starlink, in contrast, has over 160 satellites in space. What do you think, Drew?
I think that's an interesting idea. I think, in some ways it's smart. You partner with one to get the others to like come clamoring to also get your business and also just sort of get the bugs ironed out before you roll it out more broadly. Didn't we talk a couple of weeks ago, maybe even last week, about AT&T and Verizon also trying to throw some sand in the gears with T-Mobile by complaining about like spectrum issues with this direct to cell?
We did, and I think AST Space Mobile also got smacked by the FCC a little bit as well. So, yeah, this is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. I will say that this reminds me of an incredibly good move that Amazon made years ago when it first rolled out the Kindle, because the Kindle came with, I think, a year's worth of Sprint mobile service. And I remember that because I got version 1.0 of the Kindle, and I remember sitting there on the plane with my brand new Kindle, finishing my book just before the plane was, taxiing out to take off, downloading a new book and going, holy cow, Amazon's taking over the world. And part of that really was the fact that it managed to combine that make the technology completely seamless, so there really wasn't even a question of who to use. I didn't have to go somehow configure myself with my current cell service or sign up for anything. It was just done. Yeah. And I do think that approach is the right approach to take.
All right. Well, that wraps up the news for this week. Jonna, where can folks get more from you if they want to find you online or just see what you're up to?
Come hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always out there posting random things on LinkedIn, as well as at my company, Nemertes.com, NEMERTES.com.
I'll note, Jonna, that you put out a weekly newsletter, which I get and read, and I like it. So if you're into that, I would recommend signing it up. It's a good sort of overview of interesting things in tech.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm not sure which one you refer to, but I do the advisories, which I wish were weekly. They more or less 3 times a month. And, you're welcome to just hit us up, hit the contact field and sign up. We're happy to send it.
I'm Drew Conry Murray. I'm blogging at packetpushers.net, and you can find me on the Blue Sky social network. Thanks to our sponsor, iTential, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Network Break. If you like the show, we'd love it if you could leave a recommendation on Apple Podcasts or share a link with your friends. And you can always send us comments, corrections, or kudos at packetpushers.net/FU. The FU's for follow-up, and we do take all follow-up seriously, so please reach out. As always, thanks for listening.